it was very, very welcome for us.
Nobody expected this. Peter Phillips, the Queen's favorite grandson, walked up to Windsor Castle on Easter Sunday with a woman by his side, and 3 children in tow. The cameras caught everything, every glance, every smile, every reaction from the royals standing just feet away. For a family that has learned to hide its feelings in public, what happened next was remarkable, because for once, they could not hide it.
And it went in and came out so quickly that we started to talk about other opportunities. And
this was the moment everything changed for Peter Phillips, and nobody saw it coming. There is a particular kind of pressure that comes with being born into one of the most watched families on earth. Every step is scrutinized, every decision becomes a headline, and the weight of history sits on your shoulders before you are old enough to understand what that even means. For most members of the British royal family, a title is simply part of the package, handed down at birth, woven into their identity before they take their first steps. But for Peter Phillips, the eldest grandchild of Queen Elizabeth II, things worked out rather differently. And as it turns out, that difference may be exactly what shaped him into the man he is today. Peter Mark Andrew Phillips was born on the 22nd of November, 1977, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, the same hospital that would later welcome a new generation of royal children into the world. He is the firstborn child of Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, and her first husband, Captain Mark Phillips. As the eldest grandchild of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Peter occupied a significant position within the family. Yet from the very beginning, his path was going to look different from what most people might expect of someone so close to the crown. Princess Anne made a deliberate and, at the time, quite unusual decision. When Queen Elizabeth II offered to give her grandchildren royal titles, Anne declined. She felt strongly that her children should have the opportunity to grow up without the burden of a niece. HRH prefix, without the formal expectations and restrictions that come with being a prince or a princess. Captain Mark Phillips also turned down the offer of an earldom when he married into the royal family, which meant that both Peter and his younger sister Zara grew up as private citizens rather than working royals. Peter and Zara have both spoken openly about this over the years, saying that they are genuinely grateful their mother made that call. It gave them a freedom that few people born into their circumstances ever get to experience. Growing up, Peter was educated at Port Regis School in Dorset, before following in the footsteps of his mother, his grandfather Prince Philip, and his uncles Charles, Edward, and Andrew, by attending Gordonstoun School in the north of Scotland. Gordonstoun is a boarding school with a very particular philosophy. It is not known for academic rigor in the traditional sense. What it is known for is building character through physical challenges, outdoor pursuits, leadership exercises, and a culture of public service. Students at Gordonstoun take part in activities like sailing, climbing, and even serving in the school's own fire brigade. It is the kind of place that either makes you or breaks you, and for Peter, it clearly made him. He left as head boy, a distinction that says a great deal about how he carried himself among his peers. From Gordonstoun, Peter went on to study sports science at the University of Exeter. It was a practical, grounded choice that reflected his genuine interests rather than any expectation placed upon him by his family or his position. Sport had always been central to his life. He had a particular love for rugby, a sport that demands teamwork, discipline, and resilience in equal measure. As a young man, he played to a level that drew real attention, and at one point there was genuine speculation that he might go on to play for the full Scotland team. Whether that ambition was ever fully realized or not, the values that rugby instilled in him, the ability to take a hit and keep going, the importance of playing your role within a team, stayed with him long after he left the pitch. After university, Peter moved into the professional world and built a career that had nothing to do with royal duties or state functions. He worked in sports sponsorship, spent time at Jaguar and at the Williams Formula One racing team, and also held a position at the Royal Bank of Scotland. At one point, he relocated to Hong Kong, taking on a role that took him far from the spotlight of the British royal family. Eventually, he went on to become managing director of his own sports management company, a venture that drew on everything he had learned across his career. He did it on his own terms, earning his own money, building his own reputation. For a man who could have coasted on his family connections, it is a track record that commands a certain amount of respect. Outside of his career, Peter also took on philanthropic commitments. He holds two patronages, one with Habitat for Humanity, a non-profit organization that builds homes for low-income families, where he serves as an ambassador for their Youth Build program. The other is with the West Island Palliative Care Residence in Canada, the country's largest freestanding palliative care facility. These are not vanity appointments. They reflect a genuine sense of social responsibility, something that runs deep in the Phillips family, shaped in no small part by the example set by his mother, Princess Anne, who is consistently ranked as one of the hardest working members of the royal family by any measure of royal engagements. Peter married for the first time in May 2008, when he wed Autumn Kelly at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Autumn, a Canadian citizen, was working in the hospitality suite at the 2003 Formula One Canadian Grand Prix when the two of them first crossed paths. Peter was working for BMW, Williams at the time, and by all accounts the connection between them was immediate. They began a long-distance relationship before Autumn eventually made the move to the United Kingdom. He proposed during a walk in the Gloucestershire countryside, and she said yes on the spot. Their wedding was a significant occasion. It made Peter the first of Queen Elizabeth II's grandchildren to marry, and the ceremony at St. George's Chapel was attended by the Queen herself, Prince Philip, Prince William, Prince Harry, and a wide gathering of the royal family. Autumn, who had been raised as a Roman Catholic, converted to the Church of England before the wedding in order to preserve Peter's place in the line of succession, a detail that gives some indication of just how seriously both of them took the commitment they were making. The marriage produced two daughters. Savannah, the elder of the two, was born in 2010, and Isla followed in 2012. Both girls arrived with a notable distinction of their own. They were the first great-grandchildren of Queen Elizabeth II. Peter was reported to have been among the Queen's favorite grandchildren, and the arrival of Savannah and Isla only seemed to strengthen that bond within the wider family. By all accounts, Peter threw himself into fatherhood with the same energy and commitment he applied to everything else. He attended school events, sports days, and family outings, and made it clear that being a present and involved father was a priority, not an afterthought. The marriage to Autumn came to an end in 2020. The couple announced their separation in February of that year, describing the decision as sad but amicable. A statement issued on their behalf said that they had reached the conclusion that separation was the best course of action for their two daughters and for their ongoing friendship. Their divorce was finalized in 2021, after 13 years of marriage. Both Peter and Autumn committed publicly to co-parenting Savannah and Isla together, and by most accounts that commitment has held. The girls have continued to appear at royal events with their father, and the arrangement, while undoubtedly difficult in the way that all separations are, has been handled with a quiet dignity that is very much in keeping with the way Peter tends to move through the world. Following the end of his marriage, Peter briefly dated Lindsay Wallace, a connection that came about, reportedly, through his sister Zara, who introduced the two of them. That relationship came to an end in April 2024, and it was around that same time that a new chapter was beginning to take shape, one that would, in the months that followed, bring a very different kind of attention back to Peter Phillips. Because in early 2024, at a sporting event that neither of them has ever made a point of identifying publicly, Peter met someone. Her name was Harriet Sperling, and everything that came after, the appearances at the races, the royal ascot, carriage ride, the engagement announcement, and eventually that Easter Sunday walk through Windsor, began with that quiet, unannounced moment when two people simply got talking and found they had rather a lot in common. There is something quietly compelling about the way Harriet Sperling entered the world of the British royal family. There was no grand announcement, no carefully staged introduction, no publicist working the phones to manage the narrative. She simply appeared at a horse trials event in the Gloucestershire countryside, walking alongside Peter Phillips, and the two of them looked, by every account, entirely at ease with one another. For a family that has seen its fair share of complicated romantic storylines play out in the full glare of the media, there was something almost refreshing about the straightforwardness of it. Harriet Eleanor Sanders was born in 1980, which makes her a few years younger than Peter. She grew up in South Cerney, a small village in Gloucestershire, England, the same county where Peter has made his home for much of his adult life, and where the two of them now live together. Her father, Rupert Sanders, was a solicitor who passed away before Harriet's relationship with Peter became public knowledge. Her mother, Mary Sanders, is still living and was among those informed when Peter and Harriet confirmed their engagement in the summer of 2025. Harriet's background is rooted in the English countryside, quietly well-connected, but not in any way that draws attention to itself. She has distant family ties to the Duke of Gloucester through her father's side, and connections to the Courage Brewing family, though these are not things she has ever made a point of drawing attention to. What defines Harriet Sperling is not her background or her connections. It is what she chose to do with her life. She studied at St. Mary's University in Twickenham and went on to specialize in pediatric care, eventually taking up a role as a pediatric nurse specialist for the NHS. Her area of specialism is early brain development, a field that requires not only scientific knowledge, but a particular kind of patience and emotional intelligence. She has worked at Evelina London Children's Hospital, one of the leading children's hospitals in the country, and she continues to work as a nurse to this day. The fact that she held down a demanding full-time career in healthcare while raising a daughter on her own speaks to a kind of quiet strength that is not immediately obvious when you see her stepping out in a polished outfit at a royal race meeting, but becomes very clear the moment you look a little deeper. Harriet was previously married to Antonio St. John Sperling, a fitness instructor. The two of them have a daughter together, Georgina, who was born in 2011 and is now in her early teens. The marriage ended, and for a period of roughly 10 years, Harriet raised Georgina largely on her own. She has spoken publicly about that experience in a piece she wrote for Woman Alive magazine in 2024. In it, she described the early years of single motherhood as a time when resources were scarce and the future felt uncertain. But she also wrote about discovering, in the absence of material security, the strength that comes from what she called true selfless love, a love that is able to be solely devoted to your child. She wrote about the journey she and Georgina took together, just the two of them, across those 10 years. It is the kind of writing that tells you a great deal about a person, not just about what they have been through, but about how they have chosen to frame it. Harriet and Peter are believed to have met in early 2024 at a sporting event that involved their children. Neither of them has made a point of identifying exactly where or when, which is very much in keeping with the way Peter tends to handle his private life. What is known is that they were first seen together publicly in May 2024, when they made their debut as a couple at the badminton horse trials in Gloucestershire. They were photographed walking hand in hand, watching Peter's equestrian sister Zara Tyndall compete. Peter's daughters Savannah and Isla were there too, which suggested from the very beginning that this was not a relationship being kept separate from family life. It was already folding in, organically, to the wider picture. A friend of Peter's who spoke to The Telegraph around that time described the couple as simply enjoying each other's company and spending time together like any normal couple. That framing, normal, unforced, straightforward, seems to have been the tone they set from the start and have largely managed to maintain. From badminton, things moved at a steady pace. Harriet began appearing at royal events with a confidence and composure that, for those watching closely, suggested she had been welcomed into the family's inner circle rather than being kept at arm's length. In June 2025, she appeared alongside Peter in the carriage procession at Royal Ascot, a moment that, within the particular social language of the royal family, carried genuine weight. The Royal Ascot carriage procession is not something you find yourself in by accident. King Charles and Queen Camilla were both present, and Harriet was seen in conversation with them, relaxed and warm, in photographs that circulated widely. She and Peter were also seen at Wimbledon together in the summer of 2025, another high-profile occasion that they navigated without incident or awkwardness. Princess Anne's response to Harriet has been one of the more talked-about aspects of the relationship. At the Cheltenham Festival in March 2026, on Gold Cup Day, Princess Anne was photographed greeting Harriet with a kiss on the cheek. For those who follow the royal family closely, the significance of that gesture is hard to overstate. Princess Anne is not a woman given to empty displays of warmth. She is direct, famously unsentimental, and has little patience for performance. A kiss on the cheek, freely given, in full view of cameras, says something real. It says that Harriet has passed whatever test the Princess Royal quietly applies to the people who come into her family's orbit, and that she has done so without making a fuss about it. Zara Tyndall, Peter's younger sister, has also been visibly comfortable in Harriet's company. The two women have been photographed together on multiple occasions, sharing jokes and posing for photographs at race meetings, and there is nothing in their body language that suggests anything other than a genuine ease. This matters because Zara and Peter are extraordinarily close. They grew up together through their parents' divorce. They went to the same schools. They have supported each other through the various challenges that come with living life in the orbit of the royal family. Zara's approval, quietly given, carries real significance. The engagement was announced on the 1st of August, 2025. The news was shared first with Hello magazine, in an official statement issued on behalf of the couple. The statement read that Peter Phillips, son of the Princess Royal and Captain Mark Phillips, and Harriet Spurling, daughter of the late Rupert Sanders and Mary Sanders of Gloucestershire, had confirmed their official engagement. Both families, the statement continued, were informed jointly and were delighted with the wonderful news. King Charles, Queen Camilla, and the Prince and Princess of Wales were all informed of the announcement. The Hello magazine royal editor, Emily Nash, noted at the time that Harriet had been warmly welcomed into the royal family, a characterization that, given everything that had been visible in the months leading up to the announcement, seemed entirely consistent with what people had observed for themselves. Harriet's engagement ring drew considerable attention. It was described as timeless, a diamond ring connected to a well-regarded jeweler, chosen with an understated elegance that felt very much in keeping with Harriet's personal style. Her approach to dressing for royal occasions has similarly attracted notice. She has favored brands that are also worn by the Princess of Wales, including Beulah London, Emmy London, and Kiki McDonough, and there is a sense of care in her choices without any of the self-consciousness that can sometimes come with trying too hard to fit in. She wears what suits her, and it happens to sit comfortably within the visual language of the family she is about to formally join. Harriet also visited Balmoral during the summer of 2025, the royal family's private estate in the Scottish Highlands. An invitation to Balmoral is, by long-standing tradition, one of the clearest signals that a relationship has been taken seriously at the highest level. It is a deeply private setting, away from public duties and formal occasions, and it is where the family goes to simply be themselves. That Harriet was there, with Georgina, it is understood, suggests a level of acceptance that goes well beyond polite tolerance. Over the Christmas period of 2025, Peter and Harriet spent Christmas Day itself with Harriet's family, before traveling to Sandringham to spend several days with the royal family in Norfolk. It is the kind of arrangement that requires a certain amount of trust and coordination across two large extended families, and the fact that it was handled quietly and without drama says a good deal about where things stood between all parties involved. By the time Easter 2026 arrived, Harriet Spurling was not a newcomer to the royal family. She had spent the better part of 2 years moving carefully and confidently into its rhythms, attending its events, building its relationships, earning its trust. But Easter Sunday at Windsor Castle would be something different. It would be the first time she walked with the family in that setting, in front of the cameras, in front of the crowd, with her daughter by her side. It would be, for many people watching, their first proper look at the woman who is about to become Peter Phillips's wife, and it would be the moment that everything, very quietly, became official. Easter Sunday at Windsor Castle is one of those occasions that the British royal family has marked with remarkable consistency over the decades. Every year, barring exceptional circumstances, the family gathers at St. George's Chapel within the grounds of Windsor Castle for the Easter Matin service. They walk from the castle to the chapel, they greet the crowds that gather along the route, they attend the service, and they walk back. It is a tradition that is at once deeply formal and oddly familiar, a moment where the public gets to see the family together, in one place, doing something entirely ordinary in a setting that is anything but. And on the 5th of April, 2026, that tradition played out with all of its usual ceremony, but with something new woven into it. The morning was bright. The sun was out over Berkshire, which felt appropriate for what was shaping up to be a significant occasion. King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived by car to the sound of well-wishers calling out from the crowd. Camilla, dressed in red, was greeted by the Dean of Windsor, Christopher Coxworth, as she and the king made their way towards the chapel. Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, were also present, marking a return to the Easter service after a couple of years of absence. Catherine had been away from public duties during her cancer treatment in 2024, and the family had spent the previous Easter privately in Norfolk. Their 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, were with them. The boys dressed in navy suits and the family presenting, as they tend to do on these occasions, a picture of composed togetherness. The gathering was described by several observers as slightly smaller than in previous years. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie were not present. The former Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were also absent. It was, by the standards of previous Easter services, a more contained family group. But what it lacked in numbers, it more than made up for in significance, because walking alongside Peter Phillips as the family made their way to the chapel was Harriet Spurling. And beside her, for the very first time at a royal engagement of any kind, was her 13-year-old daughter, Georgina. Peter and Harriet had announced their wedding date just days before Easter Sunday. The news that they would marry on the 6th of June, 2026, at All Saints Church in Kemble, Cirencester, had been confirmed in an official statement that named the venue and the date, and noted that both families, along with the King, the Queen, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, had been informed. The timing of the Easter appearance, coming so close on the heels of that announcement, felt deliberate. This was not simply a family attending a church service. It was a family presenting itself, openly and with intention, as a unit. What struck observers almost immediately was what the family of 5 was wearing. Peter and Harriet, along with all 3 girls, Savannah, Isla, and Georgina, arrived in a coordinated palette of dark navy, light blues, and beige tones. Harriet herself wore a 2-piece set from Beulah, London, a brand that has become one of her favorites and one that is also associated with Catherine, Princess of Wales. The ensemble consisted of a peplum top and a midi skirt in a cornflower blue shade, adorned with white polka dots. She paired it with ice blue heels from Emmy London, pearl and diamond earrings from Kiki McDonough, and a bow-trimmed hat by Jane Taylor, all brands with royal associations, all chosen with a quiet precision that felt anything but accidental. Georgina, making her first appearance alongside the royal family, wore a short-sleeved navy blazer with a long brown skirt. Savannah and Isla, Peter's daughters from his marriage to Autumn Kelly, completed the picture in their own coordinated outfits, the whole group presenting a visual coherence that was immediately noticed and widely discussed. A psychologist who was asked to comment on the family's appearance for Hello Magazine described the coordinated outfit choices as an intentional strategy. Joanna Constantopoulou, a London-based practitioner psychologist with over 17 years of clinical experience, explained that when a family appears together for the first time in a public setting, what they wear can quietly shape how the moment is received. She noted that in blended families where different backgrounds are coming together at once, creating a sense of visual consistency can help reduce any perception of separation or division. Choosing similar colors, she said, makes the group look more connected, and that matters more in this kind of situation than it usually would. Looking at the photographs from that morning, it is difficult to argue with that analysis. The 5 of them looked, from a distance and up close, like exactly what they were presenting themselves as, a family. Harriet walked alongside Peter with a composure that, given the scale of the occasion and the eyes that were on her, was quietly impressive. This was St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. This was Easter Sunday with the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales. This was a crowd of more than 100 well-wishers gathered outside the gates, plus the assembled media, and yet she carried herself with the kind of ease that suggested either enormous self-possession or a level of preparation and support that had made the moment feel manageable, perhaps both. Georgina, walking alongside Savannah and Isla, was photographed smiling and chatting with her soon-to-be stepsisters, a detail that did not go unnoticed. The 3 girls, each of them teenagers or close to it, appeared relaxed in each other's company. Royal expert Rebecca English noted at the time that Georgina's presence represented a genuinely new face for the royal family at Windsor, and that the occasion marked a clear step forward in the integration of Harriet's family into the royal fold ahead of the summer wedding. Inside the chapel, the Easter Matin service was conducted as it always is, with the particular solemnity and beauty that St. George's Chapel brings to any occasion. The Dean of Windsor led proceedings, and the congregation included a cross-section of the royal family that, even in its slightly reduced form, represented the living continuity of the institution. Outside, the crowd waited, and when the family emerged, there were calls of "Ye Happy Easter" from the well-wishers gathered nearby. The Wales family waved. The king acknowledged those who had gathered, and Peter and Harriet walked back together, hand in hand, their daughters alongside them, in the spring sunshine. That image, the two of them, hand in hand, with the three girls around them, was the one that circulated most widely in the hours and days that followed. It was picked up by outlets across the United Kingdom and internationally, and the response to it was, by and large, warm. There is something about a blended family navigating a significant public moment with grace and good humor that tends to land well with people, and this was no exception. Savannah and Isla had, by this point, spent 2 years adjusting to the presence of Harriet and Georgina in their father's life. Whatever that adjustment had looked like in private, and no one outside the family is in a position to say, what was visible at Windsor was a group of people who appeared genuinely comfortable with one another. King Charles, for his part, was reported to have been visibly pleased to see Peter and Harriet at the service. The king has, over the course of his reign, shown a consistent warmth towards his extended family, and his support for Peter's new chapter appears to be genuine. Princess Anne, who was also present at the service, has already made her feelings known through the small but telling gestures that have been captured at various events over the past year. The cheek kiss at Cheltenham, the easy body language at race meetings, the way she has been photographed alongside Harriet on multiple occasions without any of the stiffness that might indicate a relationship that is being managed rather than genuinely felt. The Easter Sunday appearance was, by any measure, a success. It was handled with care, executed with style, and observed with the kind of public goodwill that Peter Phillips has quietly accumulated over a lifetime of conducting himself without drama or pretension. And when it was over, when the service had ended and the photographs had been taken and the crowd had begun to drift away, Peter and Harriet and their daughters headed back inside. Windsor Castle together, just a family, after church, on a sunny Easter morning in Berkshire, except, of course, not quite just a family, because what had happened that morning on the cobblestones outside St. George's Chapel was the beginning of something new, and in just a matter of weeks it would become something permanent. In the days that followed Easter Sunday, the images from Windsor Castle continued to circulate. Newspapers ran them on their front pages. Royal watchers dissected them online. Comment sections filled up with opinions about Harriet's outfit, about Georgina's composure, about the way Peter had kept his hand in Harriet's as they walked back from the chapel. And running through almost all of it was a version of the same observation, that this had gone well, that the family had presented themselves with dignity and warmth, that the royal family, for its part, had received them in kind. But what did the royals actually make of it all? What was the reaction behind the smiles and the waves and the coordinated outfits? And what does the arrival of Harriet Spurling into this family really mean, not just for Peter Phillips, but for the broader story of a monarchy that is quietly, steadily finding its way into the 21st century? To understand the royal family's reaction to Harriet, it helps to understand the context into which she has arrived. The British monarchy, particularly over the past decade, has been through a great deal. The departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from royal duties, the prolonged illness of King Charles, Catherine's cancer diagnosis and her careful, dignified return to public life, the ongoing fallout from the behavior of the former Prince Andrew. These are not small things. They have tested the institution in ways that have been deeply uncomfortable, and they have required the people at the center of it to draw on reserves of resilience and adaptability that not everyone possesses. Into that environment, Harriet Spurling has stepped, quietly, confidently, and without a single misstep that anyone has been able to point to. King Charles's response to Peter and Harriet at the Easter service was described by those who observed it as warm and genuine. The king was reported to have been visibly pleased to see them there, arriving with their children, presenting themselves as a family. This is consistent with the broader picture that has emerged over the past year of Charles's relationship with his nephew and his nephew's fiancée. Peter holds no royal title, and receives no public funding, which means he operates in a space that is adjacent to the royal family rather than formally within it. But the bond between them is real, and the king's visible approval at Easter was not a diplomatic performance. It was, by all accounts, an honest expression of goodwill towards a man he has known his entire life, and a woman who has, in a relatively short period of time, made a strong impression on those around. Her, Queen Camilla's response has been similarly warm. Harriet was seen in relaxed conversation with both the king and the queen at Royal Ascot in June 2025, and the ease of those exchanges suggested a comfort level that takes time to build. Camilla, who knows better than almost anyone what it feels like to be scrutinized as a newcomer to the royal family, has spoken in various ways over the years about the importance of simply being oneself in these situations. Whether or not she has offered Harriet any specific advice in private is not something anyone outside their circle would know, but the warmth that has been visible between them in public suggests a mutual regard that goes beyond formality. Princess Anne's reaction has perhaps been the most closely watched, for obvious reasons. She is Peter's mother. She is the person who shaped him, who made the decision to raise him without a royal title, who instilled in him the values of hard work and independence and quiet service that have defined his adult life. Her opinion of the woman her son has chosen to spend his life with matters enormously, not just in an emotional sense, but in a practical one. And what has been visible across multiple public occasions over the past year is a warmth and acceptance that appears entirely genuine. The cheek kiss at the Cheltenham Festival in March 2026 was the moment that many people pointed to as the clearest signal. Princess Anne is not a woman who does things for the cameras. She is not given to gestures that are designed to manage impressions or send messages. When she greeted Harriet with a kiss on the cheek in full view of photographers, it was because that is how she wanted to greet her. That is what it meant, and nothing more complicated than that. Zara Tindall's response has been equally telling. It was Zara, after all, who introduced Peter to his previous girlfriend, Lindsay Wallace. She knows her brother's life intimately, she understands what he needs in a partner, and she has seen up close the challenges that come with building a relationship while navigating the particular pressures of their family's public profile. The fact that Zara and Harriet have been visibly at ease with each other across multiple occasions, sharing jokes, posing for photographs, spending time together at race meetings and family events, suggests that Zara's assessment of Harriet is a positive one. And given how close Peter and Zara are, given the shared experiences that have bound them together since childhood, that matters. Mike Tyndall, Zara's husband, has also been part of various group outings that have included Peter and Harriet. Mike, who came into the royal family as an outsider himself, a former England rugby player from a non-aristocratic background, has always brought a particular kind of grounded energy to family occasions. He and Peter have a natural rapport, and the ease with which Harriet has fitted into that dynamic speaks well of her abilities to read a room and simply be herself, rather than performing a version of what she thinks is expected. What makes Harriet Sperling's integration into this family particularly interesting is that she has done it without sacrificing the things that make her who she is. She is still an NHS nurse. She still works. She still carries the identity she has built over decades as a professional, as a mother, as a woman who has navigated significant personal difficulties with grace and without public complaint. She has not reinvented herself in order to fit a royal mold. She has simply brought herself, all of herself, into a new set of circumstances, and the people around her have responded accordingly. The wedding, set for the 6th of June, 2026, at All Saints Church in Kemble, Cirencester, will be a private ceremony. This is consistent with the approach Peter and Harriet have taken throughout their relationship. Low-key, personal, focused on what matters to them rather than on what the occasion might look like from the outside. All Saints Church is close to where Harriet grew up in Gloucestershire, which gives the choice of venue a personal significance that goes beyond convenience. It will be the second marriage for both of them, and the blended family they are bringing together, Peter's daughters Savannah and Isla, and Harriet's daughter Georgina, will be at the center of it. The girls have already shown, most visibly at Easter, that they are capable of navigating these occasions together with a naturalness that suggests the relationships between them are real rather than performed. Savannah, at 15, is old enough to understand exactly what her father's remarriage means and to have formed her own view of Harriet. Isla, at 14, is not far behind. Georgina, at 13, has spent 2 years watching her mother build this relationship and has, by all visible indications, embraced the direction it has taken. The three of them, walking together outside St. Deus, George's chapel on Easter Sunday, smiling and chatting in the spring sunshine, were perhaps the most telling image of all, not because it was staged, but precisely because it did not appear to be. Peter Phillips has spent his entire life doing things his own way, on his own terms, without a title or a publicly funded role to fall back on. He has built a career, raised 2 daughters through a divorce, and conducted himself throughout with a consistency and decency that has earned him genuine respect, not the automatic deference that comes with a royal appointment, but the kind of respect that has to be earned over time through actions rather than announcements. The woman he has chosen to marry is, in many ways, cut from the same cloth, quietly capable, deeply committed to the people she loves, entirely uninterested in the performance of status. What the Easter Sunday appearance confirmed, and what the June wedding will make official, is that Peter Phillips has found something real. The royal family, from the king down, appears to see that clearly, and for a family that has had its share of difficult stories to navigate in recent years, the straightforward, warm, and quietly joyful story of Peter and Harriet feels, above all else, like very good news.